Amazingly enough, some people actually challenge the idea of human sinfulness, arguing that people are basically good. We talked about sin already, and in the book Servant God, I wrote chapter 2 in that book. It's by, I think, 19 authors. I wrote chapter 2, and the title of that chapter is What is Sin? And in that chapter, I record the responses I got from high school students when I put out 3x5 cards and asked them to answer the question on the card anonymously, what is sin? And some of the answers I got back went like this. This is the answer to the question, what is sin? An act contrary to that for which God stands. Something that separates us from God. Doing something morally wrong. Anything evil or unjust. Something that brings us down. The absence of anything good, anything not of God. Doing anything you know deep inside is wrong. Bad stuff. A bad thing that Satan discovered and brought upon us. The cause of all pain and suffering. When you do something you feel guilty about. Anything that makes God unhappy. Something to be forgiven. Whenever you do wrong and you don't even care what you did. And then the next two answers were given by more than 10% of the students who answered. So those are the most frequent common answers. Sin is not following the 10 Commandments. Sin is going against the will of God. Now, as you hear these descriptions, have these descriptions gotten to the root of what sin is? Or are they dancing around it, describing associated symptoms and signs and actions and reactions to sin? So would it be similar to this? Their answers are similar to this. Answering this question, what is disease? And here are the answers to what is disease. Something that goes against what health stands for. Something that requires quarantine. Something that is unhealthy. Something that is just bad or sick. Something that makes you feel bad. Doing anything you know deep inside is bad for you. A destructive element Satan discovered and brought upon us. Now, do these descriptions tell you what disease is?
No.
Or do they dance around it and describe some of the results and actions because of disease? Two students actually answered differently. Two students answered sin is the absence of love, and the opposite of God's character, sin is selfishness. Two students out of over 350. Only two gave those answers. One gave one gave the other. This would be like saying disease is breaking the laws of health and cutting oneself off from the source of life, or disease is the opposite of God's design for life. The majority of the responses were descriptions of some of the consequences and symptoms, not the actual problem of sin. And so the Bible describes sin in these two ways. Sin is lawlessness or transgression of the law, and that's in 1 John 3:4, and in Romans 14:23. Everything that does not come from faith is sin. Now, are these describing the same thing or different things? And how do you, because sin is lawlessness, and everything that does not come from faith is sin. You know, that word is what it means. So they must be describing the same thing. Can you explain how those two are the same? Okay. So first off, describe what law?
Love.
The law of love, which is design protocols, and we've given many examples. Every breath you take, you give away carbon dioxide to the plants give oxygen back to you, a never-ending circle of giving upon which life is built. But if you transgress the law, tie a plastic bag over your head, selfishly hoard your carbon dioxide to yourself, the wages of that is death. I'm getting faster at that, aren't I? Yeah, the wages of that is death. Okay, but you see that, right? This is design law, and that's the only physical example, but all God's laws function like that. So sin is transgression of that acting selfishly, which results in death. Okay. How is everything that does not come from faith sin? Well, remember the cascade of destructive events we went through. What is it that causes a breach in love? Lies believed break love and trust. Okay? And what happens when trust is broken? What do? You act in
fear.
Self-interest, fear and selfishness. That's right. Okay? Thus, when we don't trust God, we don't experience His love in our hearts, results in fear and selfishness. Thus, we act in self-centeredness, which is a transgression of the law. They're both telling the same thing. Just one is trying to give you an underlying reason why. Because our trust has been broken. That incites fear and leaves us isolated on our own to act selfishly, which is transgression of the design law of love. Unfortunately, it comes through level 4 thinking, like human law, and most people think sin is transgression of law is breaking the rules. You didn't get your TV off 30 seconds before the sun went down last night. You have broken the rule. You have a sin that needs to be confessed. or you will be punished. And this type of thinking causes God to be your enemy, and you live in fear. And the Sabbath isn't a joy. I actually talked to them. I was taking a little side, a little idea just popped in my mind. I gave them in my lecture on the aging brain one of the benefits of a weekly rest in time to rest your mind. It helps you unwind, relax, and it actually reduces inflammatory cascades. It helps to reduce your risk of dementia to take a Sabbath rest each week. But I pointed out that's only true if, as it says in Isaiah, you call the Sabbath a delight. If the Sabbath is not a delight, if it's a day of imprisonment, then there is no relaxation, there's no rejuvenation, it only causes the worst stress day of the world. So imagine you've taken a vacation from your home, you've gone to your favorite resort down in a beach somewhere, but as you get there, you discover and you believe in your mind that terrorists have just taken over the compound and you're being held there now against your will. Do you have a nice time at the beach that week? Do you relax and unwind? See, when the Sabbath is presented as a day of restriction, a day in which you're monitored everything you do, a day if you step out of line, you're going to have some type of punishment, some type of consequence. Instead of being a day of vacation, relaxation, rejuvenation, it becomes a day of enslavement that causes more stress and is destructive. It'd be better not to have a Sabbath than to do it that way. Just a little aside. Tuesday's lesson.